All right, everyone. I am hearing that there is a lot of frustration. So first, I want to say no one should ever be losing sleep or feeling like they're going to fail this class or anything like that. This is a experiential class. This is all new content, both for you and for us to be learning and launching. And so please just stick with us. Thank you for the feedback. I am continuing to receive it and see how we can improve things. So I'm going to demonstrate the Chloropleth example. I'm going to go through it a little bit here, and then I'm also going to post an additional video after this that does a little bit more in depth about some of the additional tools, and I'll continue to post those. I was intending, I'm going to pop in here real quick to, if you've been looking at the modules, do a different system for these remaining weeks. However, I think what we will do is just learn about them and then continue to build on the ones we've already learned. So I'm going to drop a poll about that in the class Slack. Okay, so this week we are dealing with Chloropleth mapping. All right, I do provide a couple of links here just on ways that you can create Chloropleth maps. Here, this is actually built on a program called Tableau. So this is a really good public example if you ever want to integrate different types of data and graphs, where this ArcGIS is really a great one for spatial data. It doesn't really have all of the interaction. So I provide this just as an example so you can see what different types of Chloropleth maps might look like. Okay. Same thing with this STI view. This looks at county by county level of rates of different diseases. Okay, so this is just two different examples. Now, if we were to go into our ArcGIS, and then if I wanted to actually, so as a first step, we'll open up our new map, we'll create our new map, and thank you for highlighting where the instruction set could have been more clear this week. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just save this as, this is my lab. What lab is this, 6 or 7? I think it's 7, yes. Okay, so lab 7. And my name so that the instructor knows who it is. I'm going to save this here so everyone can see it. I'm going to call this Chloropleth map. Okay. Okay. All right. So now, before I do anything else, I'm just going to really quickly talk about some of the different options. I know we've looked through some of these. So for this particular one, the base map you use, the purpose of the Chloropleth map is less about geography and features and more about social data. And so I would suggest one of these very basic sort of tile canvas ones for this. The human geography one might be great. Okay, just to call that out because it's just going to render over everything here anyway. Okay, so we don't have any tables in here. I could initially add a table, or I could add it as a layer. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my data. Okay, so now for this particular assignment, it is just that the data has to be from here. It can be about anything. So I am going to make sure that I download, I'm going to use the GeoJSON because I find this to be the easiest one that goes into ArcGIS. Okay, so I'm just going to add that file real quick. I do already have it saved, so that's another option I could do. I could add it from a layer that already exists here, okay, and give it the URL of the web service. All right. Go through that process, open that up. Okay. So now You can rename this if you like. I'm going to save it here. Yeah, I already have a data set of this nature in here. But for the purposes of this example, I'm adding a new one. Okay. So we now have our polygons on this map. They are, if we wanted to look at the data to understand what it was, I'm going to click back over here to the portal. So this shape area and the shape length, what it does is it gives it a tag, and then this is translated by the system and rendered as boundaries on the map. Okay, so I'm just going to open this as a CSV file real quick so we can see what it looks like in this. It's opening in Excel. Okay. All right, so that is step one. We have this now. Now I can edit my layer style over here. Okay, I can pick the field, for example, that I want it to be different by, and we did that example the first time where we used a coloring distinction. Okay, for right now, I'm just gonna leave the single symbol, okay, and I'm gonna say done. All right, so now I'm gonna head back over into my Vermont Geo Data Portal, and for this, I'm gonna look probably at demographic and economic data. You could also pull census data. This would be, similar. You could look at facilities if you wanted in coverage. And again, we have some imagery data, but we won't really get into that today. We're gonna stick with this. Okay. So this gave me a pop-up, what's new on search, because it's giving me some information about different ways that I can view the results, sort of tile versus list. Okay, and then it's telling me more about my filters that I can use. Okay. All right, so this is 2010. It's sorted by relevance. I'm gonna do it by date created. See what that gives me. Okay, so that's a little bit more granular. So I'm gonna click in this and see what it is. Oh, okay, so these are the census districts. So actually, for this one, I'm gonna take this too because I want it. So I'm just gonna download it. I'm gonna bring it over here. I'm gonna add it as another layer in my map. Okay. Oh. Yep, county sub-boundaries. Okay, I'm gonna add this in my folder. Save Vermont, census, county, sub. All right. For census, we will say. So census data has a number of different levels of granularity, and we'll get into that a little bit later in a different one, but this is how Vermont is set up. In a much more populated area, these would be much smaller districts, but as we all know, Vermont is not necessarily the most populous of places. Okay, let me rename this real quick. Vermont, census, county, sub. Or is it divisions? There we go. Okay. So now this is kind of gone over the other one. So what I could do here is I could start to play with some of my style sets and impact how this shows up. So let's go ahead and we'll click in here. I'm going to decrease the transparency. I'm going to increase the outline width. All right, I'm going to change the fill color to none. All right, I want no fill color. I want the fill to be transparent, but I want the outline color to be very clear. Okay. Excuse me. So what I've done here is now, even though this county boundaries layer is underneath the subdivisions, and at first we couldn't see the county level lines like this, I've just made them darker so now that I can. Okay, I've also made them purple so they kind of show up here. I can make them black. If I wanted to, they're still only going to show up through this orange layer as a shaded relief until we adjust the transparency of that second layer. Okay, so I do this. Okay, so then I'm gonna click into my subdivision one. I'm gonna go to my style options, come on in here. I'm gonna change my fill color to something a bit more green, a little bit more low key. It's just kind of at your preference. Okay. So I want the outline to not be too transparent. I want these outlines. What happens if I change them? So they look a little bit different now that I've changed them. Okay, I'm gonna update the color maybe to a little bit of a gray. Okay, and then I'm gonna make the fill just a bit more transparent. And I'm going to now have just a slightly different view, okay? So it's the same data I was there with originally when it was all just orange, but now I can see a little bit more about it. Okay, so I still don't have any social data in here. It's still just really boundary files at this point, okay? All right, so I'm gonna head back in here. Okay, block group. Again, this is a even further granular way of looking at it. So this is the subdivisions. These are just different ways that this information can be shown on the map. So if I were to import this as another layer, again, these are boundary-based files. Where did we go? Block group. Go. And Vermont. And there goes our orange again. Okay, so I'm going to come in here. I'm going to change this so it is clear. I'm going to make the fill entirely transparent, but I'm going to make it so that the outline is not. Okay. So this is just to zoom in really quickly and give us an understanding on how these may differ. All right. So these look very similar. So let's turn this off, on. Okay. However, as you see, one shows this a bit more distinctly than the other. And there does seem to be some things that we're losing with the subdivisions. So I'm going to turn off subdivisions and turn on the block groups because that's a little bit more traditional. I'm actually going to get rid of the subdivisions just because I don't want to mess up my map. Okay, this is what I'm going to stick with for now. All right. Okay. So this is just kind of part of the process of becoming familiar with information and searching around. So over here on the left-hand side, I've got kind of all my tags and filters. I'm going to click on people and see what happens. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this is state level. Okay. All right. So now let's look at the fields that are available to us. So I just clicked on this and I have got all of these different fields that may or may not be relevant to me in any way. So what I want to do is actually go back into the census block group data that I was just in. Excuse me. and spend some time just understanding what's in the data. Okay, so I click on my filter data and I get this select attribute filters. Okay, and then I can see what's available here. Okay, so these, like percent white alone, not Hispanic or Latino, correspond to one of these designators. So, you know, percent, this is how they have translated it. So what we want to do is find out how to best do that. So let's see. We want to view the full details. Here we go. Okay. Downloaded from the census. So I'm going to open that back up. Okay. Into SAT. Okay. So just to talk through a bit about this, I open up the data set because I want to understand really what's in here and how I can show it on the map. Okay, so I see that there's this data table. There's 552 block groups that have this corresponding data associated to them. So from the Vermont Geo Portal, I can actually directly create a map viewer if I wanted to too. Okay. You can select to open this directly into ArcGIS Online as well, or you can add it to a story just to kind of call that out. Okay, so here's what I'm looking for. So as you'll see, I have this particular, so population that is white alone. So let's just do this first. Okay. We'll do total population first, actually. Okay, so P001, 0001 is total population. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. I'm going to add it as a layer. Okay. Boom. So now we have a couple of different options that have come for us or been suggested by it for us based on the features of the data in this particular attribute. Okay. So this first one is, high to low. We could do an above or below the average. Okay. So for right now, we're just going to leave it, high to low. So I'll click on style options and you can see here, this is the range. It also shows me some information on like at the very, if we look down here, for example, like the Glastonbury Wilderness, hardly anyone lives there. It's very, very remote. But then we look up here, Montpelier, and in this area, there's a lot more folks. So much more densely populated in comparison. All right. So no, must be Manchester up here. Okay, Brattleboro. And then we've got, White River Junction over here. So you can see the little pockets of places that have higher densities of population than others per capita. And this is being shown here by this map. Now we could pick a different color ramp or scale based on our preference if we wanted to. I could do kind of, green to blue or red, whatever this is here. I could do this one. This is a personal design choice. There are some online design compliance pieces also to consider, sort of the, that's a little bit too much. I could do a single color scale too. And this one looks to be inverted. So the darkest ones are, the lowest by default. So I can switch that by just flipping the ramp colors. Okay, I kind of like this color option. Okay, so I'm going to stick with this for right now. All right. So now what I've done is I've created my Chloropleth map. So I will update the language and framing in the assignment to make sure it doesn't specifically say Chloropleth map, because I realize it doesn't say that here in the style option as you're doing it. Okay. So I've selected include in legend. All right. I'm going to keep the ones that are there. Set transparency based on attribute value. I'm not going to do that right now. Oh, oops. That's not what I wanted to click on. Okay. What I have done is, so I clicked on the fields here, and what it did is it popped up one of these so that I could examine it. So I could spend some time before importing the data, if this was in CSV, to change each of these individual field names if I wanted to. I can also come in here and do it this way. And so I will confirm. So this is total population. So we'll call this total pop. Okay. We'll leave it at 2 decimal spaces and we'll show the thousand separator. Okay, now let's click on this again and see what happens. Oh, so in that instance, it picked up the boundary file. Okay, so what's here? It's not what I want. I want to click again. All right. See if there we go. Okay, so I clicked this one. And now if I look over here, yep. So the name of my data attribute here has changed from the P001 to total population. Now, it's not required that you do this. I'm doing this simply to make it a little bit easier to go in and know which are which. So I'm just going to do quick old copy and paste in the moment just to kind of go through this process. Right, where do we go? Here we are. Okay. So you know, this is not very elegant of a way to do it, but it works. So I could easily also go back in and download a new CSV file, but for the purposes of what we're trying to do today and just demonstrate that. Okay, we'll see this one. All right. Okay. Let's look at total occupied housing units. That's a good one. Siege, right? Yep. Okay. Oh, no. This is where you got to be really careful too, because you never want to mislead data. So, all right, I'm going to not do any more for the purposes of this exercise, but just so you know, as you could see, as I was editing here, these names over here were changing. Okay. So I can see the total housing units. Looks like there's 150 unoccupied units. So let's see, they're 18% of the population is Black or African. Let's see. Oh, yeah, percent of population. So that's also important too. Okay, so let's go back up here. Population. Okay, so this is an actual number in this one. So this is how many people in the county, Orange County, there are. So you know, total population is roughly, or sorry, in this census block group in Orange County. Okay, which is basically the city of Randolph. Okay. All right. So for the purposes of the Chloropleth, we are done at this point. We have been for a while. I'm just kind of talking about the different ways we can improve our features here. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video and then I'm going to start another one that just speaks specifically to the assignment.